So I'm pretty sure I've made something similar to this in the past. And honestly, at this point, I just have a bunch of partially completed projects that I'm just working through now to finish up. And yeah, Hugh Jeffries, I watch a ton of his stuff. I can imagine if I could go back in time 15 or so years and I had a camera and I started recording, I can imagine my channel would be similar to his. Prior to everybody recording everything, I was disassembling devices, whether it was to just play around with them or to end up using them. Because if I can recall, the very first piece of technology that I really wanted to buy but couldn't afford was an iPod. So I bought a broken one, took it apart, installed just a new hard drive, bought everything on eBay, and saved a considerable amount of money by buying it used and broken and then repaired it myself. So he does a lot of that type of stuff. But the point of this video is to express, I guess, my disdain for carrier locked devices. Like, I get why they exist, but at the same time, as he points out, it might not be like that around the rest of the world. So before we go any further, let's listen to what Hugh has to say.
The second phone we'll take a look at is this Mystery V Pro smartphone, a phone so pro it still uses micro USB. Just looking at its display, it's easy to tell this is a low-end phone. Navigating into settings, we can see its full model name is the Vodafone Pro 4G. It's running Android Go 12 and crashes every time I try and view the storage size. Google Files reports as it having 0 bytes free. But according to Vodafone's site, it has only 32 gigs of storage and sold for around $130. That, and considering it's probably network locked, it couldn't be worth more than $40. Network locked phones are very hard to come by in Australia. The only phones with network locks are usually phones that cost very little money, such as this one.
So I thought that was pretty interesting that in Australia, it looks like the only phones that are network locked are the inexpensive ones. Whereas here in the United States, it seems like the phones that are most likely to be network locked are the more expensive ones. Now, I know I can't go through all websites and all different carriers and all different companies to try to prove the point that I'm making here. But in that previous video, I know it was longer, so I'll try to summarize it here. Is that if we go to Apple's website, and that's the only company I'm going to interface, Apple operates throughout the entire world. And they have websites for the different countries in which they operate. So here, we are on the United States version of Apple's website. And at the very top, carrier deals, AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon, the big three. We come over to Canada's version of Apple's website. No mention of any type of carrier. I want to say this is Italy's page. I mean, I can't read everything, and on a different screen, I selected which version of the website I wanted to see. So I want to say this is Italy's. Again, no mention of carriers. And I want to say this is Singapore's. I could be wrong, but I think it's Singapore's. And once again, no mention of carriers. So we come back to the United States version, carrier mentioned at the top. I've already selected everything on the side. Scroll down, and of course, what you see is you can buy it from $7.99. And the reason it's from $7.99 is because when you come down here to actually choose a carrier, you get a $30 discount, I guess, if you choose to. You get a $30 discount if you choose to connect it to a carrier. But then right here, and this is what is even more frustrating, it says requires activation. So there's a high likelihood that you have this $30 connectivity discount, but then there's probably a $30 activation fee. I mean, I don't know because I don't buy them through the carrier, but it would not surprise me if there was an actual activation fee. So connectivity discount is different from activation fee. So it wouldn't surprise me if there was. But of course, if you just buy and choose to connect to a carrier later, it's $30 more at $8.29, which is kind of sucks. But if you come over to Canada's website, and I know this is for the Pro, but for some reason, just the regular iPhone 15's website wasn't working with Canada. I've already selected everything. And we come down, and everything's in English, so we can read it all. And yeah, there's nothing, no mention of a carrier anywhere. So you buy the phone because you're buying the product from the company that makes the product, and then how you choose to use it is your prerogative. So you therefore go through and actually are able to use the phone on whatever network. It appears that that's how it works in Canada because there's no mention here of carriers, just different things as you're going directly through Apple. Come over to Italy's website. Again, I believe it's Italy. No mention of carriers at the top. I've already selected everything. And yeah, I mean, I would recognize if there were some carrier stuff. This is all Apple Care stuff. No Apple Care. These are your two different Apple Care options. And if you want no Apple Care, that option disappears. And I'm assuming this means buy. So you would just buy it. And that's it. And the last thing, again, I want to say Singapore. Everything's been selected. Apple Care. Whoop. Don't need that. No Apple Care. And that's it. Yep. Know it. Now, I know some people are going to say, well, when you come here and you have the carrier options, then you can either finance the phone or you can get various discounts, trade-in values. I mean, it looks like you can get all of those same options if you go directly through Apple. So that's the price. And up here is where you would choose whether or not you would finance it. So you can finance it through your carrier or you can finance it directly through Apple. So the financing part doesn't really seem to make a difference. So who you choose to finance with doesn't really seem to make a difference. Also, as we know, you can trade in your phone directly to Apple. And this isn't any way praising Apple for doing any of this. It's more so criticizing the companies, the carriers, I should say, of having you have to go through them. As far as I'm concerned, if you want service, you should be able to say, hey, AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon, whatever, I want your service. Cool. And then I will bring my device to you, and then it will work on your service. There shouldn't be me buying something that only works on your network. I mean, think about, I don't want to say that. So let's say we talk about your computer. It's a computer you might be watching this on. I mean, you're probably watching on the phone, but you buy a computer and you need to connect it to the internet. You don't have to go through your internet service provider in order to activate the computer. Or, I mean, with Apple, it's a little different, but there's no real connect. All right. You buy it, you use it the way that you want to, and then you're able to choose which company you use when it comes to connecting to the internet. So all that just to say, yes, unfortunately, we have locked phones here in the United States, but it looks like the rest of the world just doesn't operate like that. And I used to get into arguments with a friend, and this person would always say, oh, well, when we have these conversations, I'm only thinking about how things are here in the United States. And I'm like, yes, I can understand that. But one, do you realize that the United States only makes up roughly 4% of the world's population? So there's a high likelihood that the way things are operating here, one, aren't the way that they operate everywhere else, or we'll just say other places, and two, might just be the wrong way to go about it. So I think it is evident that carrier lock devices are definitely the wrong way to go. How do you handle theft and whatever, late payments? Apple can deal with that, and whatever. And now I'm just rambling to ramble, so I think I'm going to call it quits. Carrier lock devices are wrong, and I think, because I do it, instead of postpaid plans, we should be using prepaid plans. That way you give the money to the company up front, and then there are no surprises later on. So first, I apologize if there's a bunch of background noise, and I wanted to hop in here real quick. I do recall this being in the news somewhere, and I just couldn't put my brain on it. But as I was clicking through, because I screwed up with the OBS and something didn't work right, so I was actually recording the screen capture while I was already talking. But one thing that I didn't play around with too much is, okay, so let's say just no trade-in to avoid having to do that. And yes, obviously you can just pay the whole $800. Now, what I didn't realize, which again is bad for the consumer, is that even though in these other countries you have ways to finance the phone that have nothing to do with the carrier. So no trade-in, no Apple Care coverage, and of course you can add it to the bag or pay monthly with a firm. So however that works, and I'm not going to do that right now, but clearly there are options to get around a carrier at all. But here, yes, buy it, $800, you have all four options. But if you want to finance it, you now have to, you see down here in the small text, and there's somebody vacuuming. So hopefully it doesn't get picked up. But it says carrier selection of one of the big three is required. Carrier selection of one of the big three is required. And then you have things individually here. And I do remember them saying that in order, it didn't used to be the case. And I don't see how Apple caved, because you could use your Apple Card, or I guess use the Apple Pay or something. And yeah, have your little monthly payment, and you'd be good to go. But for some reason, Apple said, fine, we'll cave to the carriers. And if you want to use the Apple Card, or I guess Apple Pay, to pay for your phone in monthly installments, you can only do that if you buy a locked phone. So for the life of me, don't understand why Apple caved, but it's their phone. It will be their method of financing. So Apple Card monthly installments, Apple iPhone payments. Where does the carrier get involved? I don't understand. Why aren't the phones that are purchased through these ways just unlocked devices, and Apple handles all that type of stuff? But at the end of the day, man, it sucks for the consumer. Like, that's the only way I can put it. It sucks for the consumer.